Perry the Platypus, although he technically is a supporting character, is in my opinion the best character in Phineas and Ferb and possibly even the most important. After all, without his fights with Doofenshmirtz, Phineas and Ferb would have long since been caught by Candace, and his importance, as we already know, is because he is no ordinary pet but belongs to the OWCA, the organization without a cool acronym, who trained him and took him into their ranks at a young age. Or so we assume, since we know him he is a secret agent. Our first step is to review what we know about the OWCA, also known as the agency. This agency has evolved and changed its name on many occasions and has been present throughout the different eras of humanity. For example, in the chapter where we travel to prehistory, we see Doofengung face his nemesis Bunka, who is Perry from the prehistoric era. And with this version of Perry comes a very old version of the OWCA, as we see the prehistoric version of the Major Francis monogram. Similarly, in the year 1900, we have two different versions of the agency, one to which Swery the Swan belongs, and another that was in Panama under the name of the Secret Order of the Knights without a cool acronym, where there was also another Agent P, identical to Perry. With this, it is made clear to us that historically there have been one or more agencies that fulfill the purpose of the OWCA. There has always been this battle between good and evil, where the agency of the day sends its agents to stop the plans of mad scientists, and it is not limited to the United States or the tri-state area, as we can see with the Canadian organization without a cool acronym. But what characterizes the OWCA and all of its versions is that the agents charged with carrying out the missions are animals. One of the theories or general ideas is that, since they seem to be a government agency, it is possible that through experimentation, some of these animals were genetically altered to obtain intelligent, skilled, and above all, free working agents. But this is not the real answer, it simply cannot be. Because in ancient times with the agencies that preceded the OWCA, there were no technological advances that made these experiments possible. The basic rule, and something very evident throughout the series, is that the animals in the Phineas and Ferb universe are naturally intelligent and do not have to be modified in order to be recruited by the OWCA. This means that the first step to getting into the agency is simply to be accepted, and apparently there are several ways to accomplish this. For example, in the movie of the second dimension, we have a flashback 5 years before the summer where the series takes place, where we see Phineas and Ferb visit the Animal Rescue Center of the OWCA, and it is there where they meet Perry, whom they decide to adopt. This center is a front for the agency, as they use it to send their agents with families that allow them to go unnoticed. But the important thing here is that just as Phineas and Ferb are much younger, we have a little Perry, who judging by his size seems not to have finished developing. Despite the fact that there are no such defined developmental stages in platypuses, unlike other mammals, it is estimated that these animals reach their maximum length at around 12 months, which points to the fact that Perry was adopted by his human family at a very young age, and perhaps the animal rescue sign is not entirely false. By having so many small animals with no family, it is likely that the OWCA is actually in the business of rescuing some animals that were abandoned or lost their biological family, adding them to their ranks, which also means that Perry was abandoned or orphaned at a very young age, only to be rescued by the agency and later adopted by Phineas and Ferb. But it is not necessary to have a front family, as we can see with Agent Whale or Agent Chupacabra, and there are simpler ways to be recruited, such as getting the attention of the agency or some official with sufficient rank. We see this on several occasions, such as when Major Monogram hired the rat shortly after being fired, making him Agent R, or when Agent P recruited a bunch of African wildlife during part 2 of the episode Where's Perry? Or when Doofenshmirtz officially became an OWCA recruit along with other animals led by our favorite platypus. Interestingly, Doofenshmirtz was accepted only because he is listed on his papers as the son of some ocelots. So legally he is an ocelot. But given that Doofenshmirtz is already a fairly old adult, we can assume that it doesn't matter that he wasn't raised or rescued as a child by the agency. Any animal can join at any point in his life. Sometimes, even in bigger exceptions, like when they made Planty the potted plant an official agent for helping to defeat Doofenshmirtz in one episode, or when Major Monogram recruits a bunch of fish to avoid a lawsuit because Perry destroys the aquarium in the giant Candace's attack. The third and most incredible way to begin training at the OWCA is by simply sending in a request. Yes, we see this in the Agent P in the OWCA Files episode, where the bug trio of Napoleon, Wendell, and Floyd travel to the organization's facilities. Because according to them, they sent their application just before the end of the year, but they never received a response. In that scene, we see that there are in fact several applications sent, apparently on behalf of other animals, and many of these applications seem to be rejected. It even seems that this trio of characters aspires to be the first group of insects to be enlisted in the OWCA, and at the end of the series they are still not considered, so it seems that the insects do not qualify as useful enough animals for the organization. But once the animals are selected by the agency under any of the above three forms, that's when the real training begins. To be trained in the first place, it appears that they have to go through a domestication process. And while this is not mandatory, as we already saw with the division of Africa with animals like the whale or the chupacabra, it is clear that the vast majority of common pets do have to go through a basic training process. This is implied on one occasion when Perry goes down to his lair and the floor is covered in newspaper. Monogram explains that they are about to receive several young recruits and that the newspapers are because they are not yet trained. And here he is not referring to agent training, but to potty training, like any ordinary pet. Here, two birds with one stone fall, because it is revealed that while they are receiving their most basic training, the new recruits are given tours of the lairs of field agents, a common activity for employees getting acquainted in a new company, or in this case, a super secret agency. This is clearly to familiarize newcomers with how the OWCA works, and to see what they can achieve if they successfully complete their training. After this first stage, we can assume that the OWCA starts training them in different areas at the same time. One of them would be the art of deception. Since being secret agents, it is imperative that they always maintain their identity as agents of the families to which they are assigned, because if they fail, they will be sent to another city with another family. And obviously this sounds easy since all they have to do is act as they would in their natural animal state, but as we see many times throughout the series, it is not as easy as it seems. The second important area is martial arts. Agents are known to be trained to master multiple martial arts, and they surely vary depending on the attributes of each specific agent. Doofenshmirtz, for example, sometimes points to Perry as someone versed in judo techniques, a Japanese martial art that not only develops the physical but also the mental and emotional aspect of the practitioner, taking down opponents tactically and using the opponent's own strength against them. And since Perry has several disadvantages due to his small size and build, it sounds logical that judo is one of the platypus' predecessor arts. Watching him fight, it is evident that he is also proficient in other martial arts, such as Goshin karate for self-defense, and sometimes when he has the opportunity to fight threats of his physical caliber, he uses some boxing. So judging by Perry's performance, the OWCA has to do a full profile of each animal, and depending on that, their physical training may vary to get the most out of them in the field. On top of all this, agents are trained to familiarize themselves with a wide range of gadgets or gizmos that will be at their disposal for all kinds of missions. Throughout the series, Perry uses everything from grappling hooks, parachutes, jetpacks, and even learns to drive vehicles like jet skis and motorcycles, among many others. We also know that this part of the training is continuous, because all the time they are learning to use new devices developed by the agency. This is seen in the film of The Second Dimension, where Carl shows a new communicator to Perry and teaches him at the time the functions it has. And once the agents have sufficiently trained the 3 previous points, before being assigned to a family, they must go through some simulation exercises in order to graduate. Exercises that we see in the OWCA Files chapter. Remember I told you that Perry had a team under him? Well, it seems that once the new agents passed some filters, the agency is in charge of putting them together in small teams, which will be trained in their final stages by active field agents like Perry the Platypus. In this chapter, Perry is in command of Harry the Hyena, Maggie the Macaw, Karen the Cat, and Heinz Doofenshmirtz the Ocelot. It is certainly the chapter that gives us the best look at the training of the agents and how it works. We first see that all agents who belong to the OWCA have to wear a hat to be identified, and the rookies are differentiated by the hat band. Agents who are still in training wear a yellow ribbon, while those who are active on duty wear a black ribbon. Another thing we see is that there is an OWCA training manual, which includes a lot of the theory that agents have to memorize, including rules to follow during missions, such as not abandoning the team as Carl points out. There are also the infiltration techniques and formations, which most likely include combat techniques and maneuvers. One last thing is that at the beginning of this special we see that Perry's team has to pass a test in a carnival scenario, but it is clear that the OWCA trains its agents for all kinds of adversities, as Carl mentions that they still have to overcome riot scenarios, chase, and one of ancient ruins, so it seems that these exercises are like levels, whose difficulty keeps rising gradually until the new ones prove to be able to go through all of them successfully and then receive their black belt, which certifies them as field agents ready for a real mission. Obviously, by demonstrating how well they perform against a real threat, this team skips the tests. So not all agents are forced to go through all the exercises or tests if they are able to demonstrate that they are ready to move up to field agents, just as Planty the Potted Plant did. So mystery solved, and solved in a surprisingly effective way. You were probably expecting something more dramatic or dark, but the truth is that there is nothing in the evidence to show us any questionable moral practices on the part of the OWCA towards the animals. The only unknown we are left with is that we don't know where they speak English from, as they all have their dens equipped with labs, computers, and we see how Perry is constantly taking notes and making drawings, and it is clear that they have an intellectual capacity far beyond what is expected. There are several dark theories about this, such as a particularly crude one involving experiments on real animals conducted by the CIA. You may have heard about Operation Acoustic Kitty, where an attempt was made to turn a cat into an espionage tool by making surgical modifications to equip it with a microphone and antenna. Although many details are unknown, the experiment resulted in the cat's accidental death, and it is theorized that much like the CIA and other organizations, the OWCA experimented on its animals. But keeping in mind everything we've already seen, I think the most likely explanation is that the OWCA chooses animals that have that high level of intelligence in the first place, and already possess those out of the ordinary abilities in the first place. So the closest we'll get to those terrifying experiments will be when the Doofenshmirtz from the second dimension captures Perry and the other 25 OWCA agents and turns them all into cyborgs by brainwashing them to make weapons to serve his family. But beyond that, you have nothing to worry about, I think. So I hope you liked this video. Like it if you did, subscribe for more videos like this, and I'll see you in the next mysterious mystery. Bye.